Hello, how are you? It is I, your host, Cheryl Arkeson. We're here on the Quilters Playcation Adventure Sewalong 2024 Rainbow Edition. I'm a minute late because there was a car alarm going off outside. Made sure it wasn't mine. And we move on. We move on with life. So we are here today for week 43 of the Quilters Playcation Adventure Sewalong, which means we are here at the start of our very last row. It's the last row. I'm a little bit sad about it, if I'm being honest. Finishing up this beautiful quilt in here. Lots of fun improv play that we've been having over the year, but we still have 7 weeks left, including today. So let's get to it. I'll bring you over to the sewing table. I do have a guest in here today, but I promised her I wouldn't show her. So let me flip you around. We'll say hello to the ladies tucked in there. Yes, we have a guest today. I think I mentioned it last week that we are hosting a German athlete, someone same age as my daughter, who is the pentathlete, and this is a German pentathlete that's come here to train with our team and explore Canada a little bit, particularly Alberta. So we've been doing some mountain time, some tourist things, lots of fun stuff. She is wonderful, and I'm not just saying that because she's right behind me in there, but she does have AirPods in, so she can't really hear me. Oh, she smiled at me. Had to do that. So what block are we doing today? Let's get right to it, because I think it's going to take a little bit of time. I pre-sewed a little bit for you, for us, just some strip sets, right? Random strip sets. I did all my rainbow colors, but not in rainbow order. So these ones, the smaller ones, have 4 strips. This has all 6. Make them how big that you want. My inspiration today for this block actually comes from somebody else's miniature quilt, or mini quilt, not a miniature. It was, let's see if I can bring this up here for you. This is sort of my rough sketch, and the artist was Alexandra Kingwell that I saw. It was the Studio Art Quilt Association, SAQA, their auction that they do as a fundraiser. This was it was a similar sort of looking quilt in their auction, and I really liked it, so I want to give credit where credit is due. Alexandra Kingwell is definitely, her piece is what inspired the quilt. I will try to find an image of the quilt and include it in the notes when I post the video on YouTube. If I forget, someone please remind me, but that was where it came from for today. So I started off by making scrap strip sets, as I mentioned before. I only want to work on them kind of one at a time, because what we really need to do are kind of cut curves, our good old improv curves, right, where we're cutting right sides up and then sewing them together. And we kind of want to do them, you don't really go left to right. We're kind of going to go, the strip sets will get sewn in left to right, but the overall block isn't getting assembled left to right. That probably doesn't make very much sense right now, but it will as we go through it. So I'm going to start with one of my strip sets. I've cut this giant piece. It may be more than I need. It might not be. We'll find out. But I've got my pieces layered right sides up. I am going with the bigger piece at the top just because that's going to get cut off. If I flip it around and I do this curve, I may end up with nothing or just a tiny little amount. So that is something to think about when you're doing your strip sets, is that the piece that's at the top should be a little bit thicker, just to give you wiggle room. You know me, I love my wiggle room. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to adjust this a little bit so I can safely cut without blocking your view. I'm going to go ahead and just do kind of an arc that goes through both of these. Now you will see, I'm going to cut that. That's going to be scraps. This piece is going to be scraps. I have this gap here. I'm not going to worry about that because I will be eventually cutting an arc going the other direction. So this is getting cut off anyways. So I'm not going to worry too much about the fact that I have that there. I'm just going to sew this arc right there and stop when I get there. So I cut right sides together, or right sides up, and I sew, like always, right sides together. This block is a bit of an experimentation. I didn't have a chance to make a sample beforehand, so we'll see how it comes together. I feel like if we go slow, it will work. I think I've thought it through well. I've done these kinds of curves and everything enough that I'm not too worried. So we're just going to have to take it one seam, one cut at a time. So go ahead and press that. I'm just seeing which way it wants to be pressed. I think it wants to be pressed towards the background. So that's what I'll do. I do feel like in the end, this may be a block that's going to be happy with flatter. So I have that handy. And I'm not going to worry too much about pressing directions because I'm just going to let the block tell me what it wants to do instead of trying to force it. So now for this curve, I'm going to go that way. Now I have a hard time cutting in that direction, but this is what we want to do. So I'm just going to kind of place this. I kind of want it at a jauntier angle. So I'm going to place it sort of where I want it, and I want to do that curve. Now I'm not going to be very good if I cut that curve in this direction because it's on the wrong side for me because I'm right-handed. So I'm actually going to just rotate this around so that I can cut in the right direction. So discard our scraps. Now you can see kind of where that's going to go. I'm going to move this from underneath. And now I have this piece. Again, it's not covering up on the top here, but we're going to be okay because we're going to do another cut that way afterwards. So let's just go ahead and, actually I don't want to sew that in that way. I'm going to start here. Start about there. There are times, I'll be honest, when I think I've thought things through properly and then I realize I haven't, but it doesn't mean the block's ruined. It just means it's probably going to look a little bit different than I was anticipating. It's not really a big deal. So we're experimenting and playing with this. That's the whole point, right? Just going. Okay, let's see how that one is treating us. Again, yep, I think it's going to be happier if I press towards the background, so I will do that. You just want to make sure when you're pressing that you don't have any kind of extra folds. Right, that everything is going. Initially when I did this, it was kind of extra folded over, so there was a flap there as opposed to it being like that. Now, these don't line up at the bottom. I'm okay with that because I already anticipate kind of doing a curve along the bottom to assemble the final block. So now I want to cut that curve. Let's put this on top. I want to cut this curve to create a point. So that's what I'm going to do. I am going to move this down a little bit, but I'm just going to kind of come like this. So you can see how that top piece gets a lot smaller. You don't see as much of it. Alrighty, and we just keep going on and on, keeping usable scraps. The rest can be trimmed away. Now, one thing I've just noticed that I've done, let's pull this away. I had initially pulled this down so I had a bit more here, but I did not pay attention to the fact that I had a gap there. So I'm going to pull this up a little bit. It's a really gradual curve. I could, if I really wanted to, recut, right? To make sure that when I cut here, I have all of that. And in fact, I think I actually will. And that's okay. You can do that. You can make that cut. I'm just following along where I had the cut. And so that is going to go in the scrap bin. That's all. And then I will sew this curve together. So it's not entirely wrong that we're going left to right. It's just that I didn't do the first background piece because I'm going to frame the kind of outsides with background at the end to make sure I've covered everything off. And that will also let me know how much do I actually need. Right, because remember, we don't want to have too big of background pieces in here because then we, like in the center here, because then our block's going to be too wide. Which, again, we can just experiment, see where it goes on that. So I'm definitely making my way through that big piece that I had, but with scraps, very functional scraps. So that's where I'm at right now, right? I want to keep an eye on my size. This is going to obviously shrink, and right now I'm at 10 here, but I'm adding this in, so it will shrink a little bit more, but I don't want to put this right at the edge. I want to put it, you know, closer over just to have some room there. So I'm just trying to think again. I'm going to go like that, and I'm going to cut this curve. So it's like I'm kind of cutting this into this background piece. Let's rotate it again, just for the ease of cutting for me. And go like that. Right, so this is going to get sewn into here. Work with me, folks. It's coming together. I think it's working. You know that in this quilt along, we're more casual. It's not so much a defined pattern as a guide for how we're going to sew with this. So I appreciate that you are coming along for the ride with me. Okay. So now we can get a better idea of what's going on. You can see I want to turn these two into something like this, right? So I am going to need more background pieces. And I'm probably going to go with things that are already rectangular so that I know it's kind of framing things up. So I'll add these pieces to the scraps for another bit, and I have more of my terrazzo fabric. That's what I've been calling this one. Just kind of eyeballing it here. I think if I cut more or less on this fold, I'm getting enough. Obviously, I won't use this whole big piece that I have here, but I'm just gonna cut this first one. So I want to make this cut. Again, I want to move it over so that I'm not left with kind of a blank above here. So that's going to be my cut. Right, like that. I'm just going to leave all the rest of this fabric for the moment. You can see it's quite a big piece. I'm just going to leave it till we do the other side. Because I feel like I've gone excessively large, but we'll find out. Alrighty. And if we have gone excessively large, we got to think about what we're going to do. I don't necessarily like to think of it as problem solving. More like a challenge accepted kind of moment. Okay, see, we got both now. So where are we at size-wise? I know for these blocks, I need 10.5 inches, which gets me over here, right, to about there, if I line it up here. So I can play around with it. I think what I'm going to do is, right, because I had what I was planning on doing is doing another kind of loop here, which I could absolutely do. But I think what I'll end up doing is just cutting it straight like this, so that this is kind of off the block. So it's a little bit different than my original inspiration, but it works. I'm just going to trim off this extra fabric here. Right, I don't need that much. But what I did want to do is have something on the bottom. So where am I height-wise as well? So for my shortest to the shortest here, that's like 8.5 inches. So I need to add more. If I go from the bottom here up, I don't quite have enough. So it definitely means I need to go across the whole width. Now, of course, this piece that I cut is not big enough, but that's okay. I got more. I've got more. Right? And I have actually lots of this fabric, so I'm not afraid to play with it at all. So I'm going to just go ahead and use this big piece of fabric and then put the scraps where the scraps go. But I am going to give it a little press first. Because I think once I sew this on, we'll have to make the decision on whether we're squaring it up like that or if I am going to add something on the side here. So just like before, I'm layering it and I'm going to cut a curve. So the bottom of these kind of, I don't know, are they half canoes? Maybe that's what we're calling this block. Half canoes, they're going to be a little bit curved too. So again, fabrics are layered right sides together. And I'm just cutting that sort of curve through there. That gives you a better idea of what the finished block is going to look like. I'm going to just keep that curve lined up and go ahead and sew all of this together. And then we'll decide where we're going with it, right? Be flexible. just going slow. And as always, when we do our improv curves, I haven't mentioned this in today's video yet, just worrying about lining up, you know, an inch or so in front of the needle, and then adjusting as necessary as you go without stretching or pulling on the fabric. You're guiding it through the machine. You're not stretching it. You'll always be surprised at how much your machine likes doing these little curves. At least both of my machines like it. I guess I can't speak for every machine. So let's press this and see what happens. And we'll decide. So it's definitely a lot bigger than I need. Okay, see where we're at? Definitely bigger than 10.5 inches, but I'm just going to place my ruler on it and see where it takes me to look at 10.5 inches. So there's my corner here, right? I could cut off this one side, but I actually am cutting off that side a little bit more. So maybe I want to just have one side be a half. And then the gradual there. Yeah, I like that. I like that exactly where it is. I could twist it a little bit more, but I really like the curves. And we're just gonna, instead of, I could, if I wanted, add a piece here, but I would end up with a very skinny little canoe, and I'd rather go with a half one than a skinny one. And then I made sure I wasn't cutting off this one. I wanted a whole one here. So I have at least a 1/2 inch so that even when the block is sewn into something, I still haven't cut off this bottom point. Remember, that's not wasted fabric, that's just free fabric for something else. Okay, 10.5 inches. There we go. There we go. Yeah, I like that. So it definitely looked very different with all that background than small like this. So what if, let's troubleshoot for a second. What if you didn't want this half one here? How do we alleviate the potential or minimize the potential of that happening? Two things. You can make your strip sets. We don't even have to make the strip set smaller, but when you're cutting your first curves here, you can cut them closer together so they're not as wide. You can also have less background in between, right? So between this one and this one, I had quite a bit of background, and then I realized I was getting bigger, so I made this background a little bit smaller. So that's two ways to manage the width of the block if you don't want to have a partial sort of canoe top in there. But I'm happy with the way it turned out. I think it's kind of fun. It's a really nice addition to the quilt. I think it will look good. So there's our finished block. Yay! So let's come up. The ladies are buried in the corner there. Hello, let's go put her on the wall. Just want to have this far enough out and at an angle so that you can see her go on the wall. There we go. Oops, as I kick a dog ball on the floor. I think that's a nice, fun addition. It's a good contrast to some of these other sort of blocks. I could even rotate that if I feel. We'll see what happens when I go to assemble the quilt top. But there you have it. I was asked last week about the other version of this, the mostly monochromatic version, and I did start playing this morning to make the 6th row for that, because I think I've only made 1 or 2 blocks from it. So I don't want to get on to today's block until I make all of those, because I like to kind of do them in order. It's just, normally I wouldn't care that much, but something about this project with that order has been very helpful for me. So it's play, but order at the same time. I'm just going through to see if there's any questions in the process. Feel free to jump in and ask any questions. No, I don't see any in there. But you know where to find me. If you do have questions, you can always put them below the post in Instagram. You can also put them on the YouTube video, and you know where to find me. Remember, tag these. Instagram is doing weird things with hashtags again. Why? But we won't go there. But they are doing weird things with hashtags, so I haven't been able to see all of the posts, but I'm trying to get in there and like them. Remember, it's Quilters Playcation, QP Adventure Sewalong, and QP Adventure Sewalong 2024. Check all of those hashtags to see what's up there. I am Cheryl Arkeson, your host on the Quilters Playcation Adventure Sewalong. This was week 43. I got it right on the first try. This was week 43 of our 49-week improv adventure, inspired by the rainbow, because who doesn't love rainbows, right? So take care, everybody. Thanks, Mindy. She says she loves this one. It's a fun one. I think, yeah, they all have lots of potential, but I could see this on a much larger scale. As opposed to in repeat, I could see the scale of this being something that you could really, really play with. Anyways, I digress, as always. I am going to sign off. I'm going to take Jennifer, our lovely German friend. We're going to go back home after this. She's probably hungry, and we only have treats in here. We're going to head back home and see the progress on the bathroom. Folks, bathroom is almost done. Almost. We won't talk about it until it's done, but it's getting closer. And wait till you see it. Oh my goodness. I might have to just do a live tour when I finish, because it's just over the top and amazing, and I love it. But I digress even more. Take care, everybody. Have yourself a wonderful week, and we will see you next time. Keep playing. Have fun.